SPQR, 4 innocent-looking letters carved into monuments, stamped onto coins, echoed in textbooks, glorified by Hollywood. But what if everything you thought you knew about Rome was a lie? What if SPQR never represented the people, but was always a tool of control, a weapon dressed as democracy, a mask worn by tyrants, a 4-letter illusion that seduced generations into believing they were free? Because behind the legends of gladiators and emperors, behind the marble and the myths, Rome didn't just conquer with swords, it conquered with symbols. And SPQR, it was the sharpest one of all. Welcome to Shadows of Ancient History, where today we tear through the golden curtain and expose the propaganda that fueled an empire. The lie that infected law, loyalty, and leadership across the entire history of the Roman Empire. This isn't just history, it's a warning. The Roman Republic began not just with a revolution, but with a ritual. When the last king of Rome, Tarquin the Proud, was overthrown, the act was sealed not only by political will, but by invoking Jupiter Optimus Maximus, the supreme deity of Roman order. His temple stood towering above the Forum like a divine courtroom, watching the Republic rise from monarchical ashes. The Senate that followed wasn't just a governing body, it was a sacred institution. Its sessions opened with prayers and sacrifices. Every decision made beneath its vaulted ceiling echoed through the realm of the gods. Even the title Pontifex Maximus, eventually absorbed by the Caesars, originated as the highest religious office. The Republic was built on a system where priests were politicians and politicians were priests. To legislate was to invoke the heavens. Rome didn't separate church from state. Rome was the church and the state. This intertwining wasn't metaphorical, it was spatial. The original Senate House, the Curia Hostilia, was constructed beside the Regia, the palace of Rome's religious leaders. Temples weren't far-off sanctuaries, they were urban command centers. Urban planning itself followed religious blueprints. Every new Roman colony mimicked the spiritual layout of the Urbs Romae, Rome herself, with a central forum, cardinal street alignments, and an augur's sacred markings etched into the land. Scholars still debate whether early Roman religiosity was sincere devotion or a calculated mechanism for control, but few dispute the power it wielded. When a Roman general crossed into enemy territory, he first consulted the gods. If the omens were favorable, war followed. If not, delay. Delay meant divine hesitation. Take the Fetialis, a group of priest ambassadors responsible for formally declaring war. They performed rituals involving javelins and sacred language before a conflict was sanctioned. Without their rites, conquest wasn't holy, it was blasphemy. In a sense, Rome never waged war without permission from the skies. But the gods didn't just approve wars, they approved emperors. Before Julius Caesar marched on Rome, he paused to consult the omens. When he crossed the Rubicon, it wasn't just defiance, it was spiritual alignment. Alea iacta est. The die is cast was less gambling phrase, more invocation. The gods had spoken, and Rome listened. Even the calendar, Rome's tool for organizing both state and sacred affairs, was once under the control of the pontifices. Before Caesar's reform, they had the power to insert, amend, or delay intercalary months, often for political convenience. In that sense, time itself could be swayed, if not by sorcery, then by strategy. It's no wonder then that Rome's expansion resembled not only a military campaign, but a religious crusade. New provinces were not only conquered, they were consecrated. Temples were erected before forums. The gods of conquered peoples were invited into Rome's divine pantheon, not as guests but as subordinates. Jupiter ruled them all. The earliest appearance of SPQR Senatus Populusque Romanus on stone altars wasn't just about civic identity, it was an offering, a declaration that the Senate and the people of Rome moved as one under divine contract. Every inscription was a spell cast in stone, every engraving a mark of dominion, not just over land, but over spirit. But Rome's magic wasn't the ecstatic frenzy of Dionysus or the mystical solitude of Egyptian priests. It was colder, more calculated, a form of occult bureaucracy papered in decrees, carved into marble, legislated through rituals. The Senate's very architecture resembled a temple not by accident, but by design. And perhaps most striking of all, no major decision in the Republic could be taken without consulting the auspices. Birds, yes, birds. Augurs, perched on hills or rooftops, observed their flight, their cries, their orientation. If the birds disagreed, the state obeyed, or pretended to. One strange episode, almost comic in hindsight, saw a political vote annulled because the augur had forgotten to check the chickens, the divine chickens. A bad omen meant bad governance. No matter how rational the decision, if the gods said no, so did the state. Even skeptics of the time like Cicero acknowledged this power. Whether or not the gods spoke didn't matter. Rome acted as if they did, and when Rome acts, the world follows. So when you walk through the ruins of the Forum or trace your finger along a dusty marble inscription bearing the letters SPQR, remember, you're not just touching politics. You're touching a sacred machine, a machinery built not on logic or law alone, but on ritual, symbol, and celestial permission. The Republic wasn't just political theater, it was a liturgy, a ceremony, a carefully choreographed dance of statecraft and spirit. And this dance was only beginning. Because while the Republic raised temples to Saturn and speeches to the Senate, the empire would soon raise altars to men. When Rome looked to the sky, it wasn't searching for stars. It was reading signs. The practice of augury, interpreting omens from the flight of birds, was not superstition hidden in shadow. It was institutional law. An augur's verdict could cancel elections, postpone wars, or dissolve legislation. These weren't eccentric rituals from Rome's fringes. They were core mechanisms of power, enforced as seriously as any Senate decree. In fact, many of Rome's most pivotal decisions were delayed or accelerated based on the auspices. Before any magistrate could assume office, before a general could lead his army out of the city gates, the gods had to be consulted often through birds, sacred chickens, lightning strikes, or even the condition of animal entrails. Take the infamous case of Publius Claudius Pulcher during the First Punic War. Before a naval battle in Mabel, he ordered the sacred chickens to be released to read their feeding behavior, an accepted method of divine communication. When the chickens refused to eat, a dire omen, Claudius famously declared, "If they won't eat, let them drink," and threw them overboard. He proceeded with battle and lost disastrously. Rome was outraged, not just because of the defeat, but because a commander had mocked the gods. Claudius was recalled, fined, and his career effectively ended. Historians still debate whether it was his arrogance or the omens themselves that doomed the fleet. But in the Roman imagination, the answer was clear. Divination wasn't just tolerated, it was law, a form of state intelligence. The augurs were state officials inducted into a secretive priesthood, often drawn from Rome's noblest families. And their readings shaped not only civic life, but military doctrine. Julius Caesar himself served as Pontifex Maximus, granting him influence over Rome's religious machinery. Through this role, favorable or unfavorable omens could be interpreted or emphasized to align with his political timing. The gods may not have spoken on command, but the augurs could. And he wasn't alone. Many generals traveled with augurs and priests, enabling on-site interpretations of omens. While no physical kits remain, the practice of bringing diviners along ensured divine consultation was never far from the field. Rome was never secular. It was a spell in motion. But while augury governed the future, another form of ritual governed the past. Exposé, the reading of entrails. In this grim art, sacred animals, often sheep, were sacrificed, their livers examined for blemishes, marks, or unnatural textures. The haruspices, experts in this practice, claimed that the organs carried messages from the gods. To modern ears, it may sound primitive, but in Rome it was forensic theology, a divine diagnosis. Even foreign kings would send emissaries to Rome's haruspices seeking insight. Because these men weren't mere mystics, they were state advisors. One lesser-known, yet haunting incident occurred during the reign of Emperor Tiberius. After several unexplained disasters, including the collapse of an amphitheater in Fidene that killed thousands, the Senate consulted the Sibylline books, a cryptic set of prophetic texts stored in the Temple of Jupiter. The response? Human sacrifice. 2 Gauls and 2 Greeks were buried alive under the Forum Boarium. Rome hadn't practiced human sacrifice in centuries, but when omens turned dire, even the most ancient taboos resurfaced. Rome didn't just read signs, it obeyed them no matter the cost. This was the true paradox of Roman reason, an empire of architects, engineers, and jurists, still bowing to birds and buried bones. And perhaps most chilling, they didn't see this as contradiction. It was synthesis. The philosopher-politician Cicero, who wrote extensively on divination despite doubting it, acknowledged its necessity. Even if augury is false, he mused, it is useful. The utility of belief, the power of shared illusions. Rome didn't need every citizen to believe the omens were real. It only needed them to act as if they were, because shared symbols move crowds. And SPQR wasn't just engraved in stone, it was etched into memory. But as the Republic faded and empire rose, a new form of spiritual engineering emerged, less public, more secret. Rome didn't abandon its rituals, it buried them deeper. Power, after all, thrives in mystery, and so did the empire. Mystics began to replace augurs, symbols replaced laws, initiations replaced elections, and the state became a temple to itself. Because once you train a people to believe that fate can be read in a bird's wing, or a sheep's liver, or the glow of lightning, you no longer need to convince them with reason, you only need to control the signs. Beneath the Roman streets, in candlelit chambers carved from stone, something stirred. Not the clamor of politics, not the echoes of war, but chants, incense, initiation. And as the Roman Empire expanded, stretching from the fog of Britannia to the sands of Syria, it swallowed more than cities. It absorbed some, dozens of them, hundreds, and some didn't stay in temples. Some moved underground. By the 1st century AD, Roman citizens from all walks of life were whispering names not found on official altars. Isis, Mithras, Cybele, Serapis. The mystery cults, as historians later called them, offered something Rome itself could not: intimacy with the divine, personal salvation, secret rites, and transformation from within. These weren't public religions with prescribed rituals and open festivals. They were hidden pathways. You didn't just join a mystery cult, you were initiated, sworn to secrecy, taken through symbolic deaths and spiritual rebirths. And while modern scholars still debate the exact rites performed, ancient evidence leaves no doubt. These cults spread fast and deep, becoming an underground current beneath the entire history of the Roman Empire. Take the Mithraic Mysteries, a Persian-rooted religion that became wildly popular among Roman soldiers and bureaucrats. The central image of Mithras, slaying the cosmic bull, appears in dozens of subterranean temples across the empire. In these dim sanctuaries, initiates underwent a series of stages, perhaps 7, symbolized by exotic titles like Raven, Lion, and Father. Each level required tests, sacrifices, silence. Why the secrecy? Because unlike Rome's civic religion, the mysteries didn't serve the state. They served the soul, or perhaps something older. And the emperors noticed. Emperor Commodus, remembered for his eccentricity and brutality, claimed himself an initiate of Mithras. Nero flirted with Egyptian rites. Hadrian built temples, not just to Jupiter, but to Serapis and Osiris. They weren't merely honoring conquered gods. They were searching for power beyond the Senate's grasp, power that flowed not through law but through transformation. Historians still debate whether these emperors genuinely believed in the rituals, or whether they merely recognized the psychological power belonging to something hidden, ancient, and awe-inspiring. But what's certain is that they didn't ignore it. In fact, as imperial cults grew, emperors began fusing themselves with divine archetypes. They no longer just worshiped gods, they became them. One strange and revealing episode involved Emperor Elagabalus, a teenage ruler from Syria who imported the worship of the sun god Elagabal to Rome. He didn't merely build a temple, he restructured Roman religion. Declaring the sun god supreme, Elagabalus paraded a sacred meteorite through the streets of Rome as the god's earthly embodiment. He married a Vestal virgin, violated countless taboos, and insisted on being worshipped not just as Caesar, but as a living conduit of divinity. The Senate was horrified. The people were bewildered. But underneath the scandal was a profound shift. The lines between state and soul, between emperor and priest, were eroding. Not all mystery cults sought power and spectacle. The cult of Isis, rooted in Egyptian theology, was more subtle, yet no less potent. Isis promised eternal life. Her rituals involved purification, symbolic journeys through death, and communion with the divine feminine. Even Roman elites joined, seeking healing not from physicians, but from dreams and rituals. The poet Apuleius, in his Metamorphoses, describes being initiated into Isis's mysteries. I approached the very gates of death, and treading the threshold of Proserpine, I returned, having been born through all the elements. Whether metaphor or memory, his words reflect the hunger for something Rome's rational institutions could not provide, because something was happening inside the empire, a shift. As Rome's external borders hardened, its internal soul softened. Stoic discipline gave way to ecstatic yearning. Martial pride gave way to metaphysical longing. And beneath the empire's marble facade, a quiet revolution unfolded not with swords, but with incense. In a Mithraeum beneath a bustling Roman street, a soldier might be kneeling, blindfolded, preparing to be reborn in the blood of a sacred bull. In a courtyard cloaked by night, a noblewoman might be shedding her jewelry, walking barefoot to be baptized in the rites of Isis. These weren't fringe occurrences, they were the heartbeat of an empire unraveling from within. Even the architecture of power began to shift. Palaces were built with hidden chambers. Public temples contained private sanctums. The emperor's image, once stoic and military, now appeared with halos, divine rays, cosmic animals. Caesar was no longer a man with a title. He was a bridge between worlds. The Senate had not vanished, but it had become irrelevant. Its speeches echoed in halls where symbols mattered more than syllables. And the true centers of gravity were moving into temples, underground and within minds. Rome, at its height, had become a spiritual empire, not in creed, but in structure. Not in theology, but in effect. It ruled not only bodies, but beliefs. And its deepest power wasn't law or roads or legions. It was initiation. Because once a citizen passed through a secret rite, once they believed they had been reborn under starlight and sacred names. They didn't just obey Rome, they belonged to it. The stones lie broken. The temples echo only wind, and the bronze eagles that once soared above legions now sleep beneath dust. And yet Rome is still here. It lives on not in legions or senates, not in Caesar's bloodline or SPQR etched in crumbling archways, but in something more enduring, quieter, woven deeper than constitutions, older than any flag, longer lived than legacy. It lives in symbols, because Rome was never just a city, it was an incantation, a name spoken to summon power, obedience, and awe. A system of signs engineered to enchant the mind, to convince generations that power, when wrapped in ritual and crowned by sacred language, is not only lawful, but divine. And maybe that's why the spell never really broke. For once, a republic becomes religion. You no longer need to wield the sword. You only need to protect the myth. And myths defend themselves. And Rome held it longer than any before or since. Its leaders became gods. Its symbols became sacred. Its ruins became relics. And as centuries unfurled, the ritual didn't vanish. It adapted. It changed its robes. It changed its gods. But it never lost its rhythm. From marble Senate floors to velvet parliaments, from altars of emperors to microphones of presidents, from temple incense to televised oath-taking, the stage changed, but the liturgy endured. From auguries of birds to polls, headlines and ceremonial scripts. The architecture is modern, the language is digital, but the enchantment, it's still here. The spell remains. And maybe, in the quiet spaces between memory and meaning, we still feel it. In the way we raise statues, in the way we chant allegiance, in the way we trace the outlines of empires long after they've turned to dust. Because when a civilization inherits symbols baptized in sacred blood, it doesn't simply remember history, it rehearses it, generation after generation, like a rite too deep to forget. You reenact it so gently now. Let the vision dim, let the marble yield to moss and silence. Let SPQR drift like incense into the dark, not erased, but absorbed into the soul of the world. Rome is gone, but the ritual remains.